denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Tonight, we'll take a peek behind the waterfall. Our protagonist is a Danish man on vacation in the U.S. He has a deep interest in waterfalls, so he and his traveling companion decide to visit one. They find an eerily empty picnic ground, and that's just the beginning. This story is called Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls and was written by Claus Holm. I'm not even sure why I'm writing this story. Jenny's parents and friends don't believe me. The police have done everything they could, but I don't think they believe me either. The park ranger said he didn't believe it either, but I'm not so sure about him. Maybe that's why I'm doing this, because he seemed to know something. And he only called me a lunatic because, what, he's protecting something? I don't know, but someone should know. So if you're listening to this, then take the advice of the band TLC. Don't go chasing waterfalls. I don't live in the United States, but I come over from Denmark about once a year when my schedule allows me to. I used to have family there, but at this point all I have left are friends. Great friends, probably the best ones I've ever had. And Jenny was the best of them. I should tell you a little about Jenny. She worked as a teacher and usually had time off whenever I came because I tried to fit it into the school breaks. She was a couple of years younger than me, but had this kind of radiant, academic beauty. The kind where you look at a woman and you know she's whip smart even before she opens her mouth. She was probably the kindest person I've ever met. And as far as I heard, her students seemed to think so too. She had an on and off boyfriend, but through the years where we hung out, she was never with him when I came over there, and I never actually met him. I don't even know his number, which I hope Jenny's parents have. I hope someone told him about this, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Funny thing, Jenny and I actually met on an international dating site way back in the day. We matched, but figured that living on opposite sides of the world, me in Copenhagen, Denmark, and her in Seattle, Washington, wasn't exactly going to make for a stable relationship. Instead, we decided to be friends. And even though that's kind of a cliche thing to say when you don't want to date someone, in this case, we both meant it. We stayed in touch, and I visit Jenny whenever I'm in the U.S., usually living with her in her small Seattle house. Now, for those of you who've never been to Denmark, I should tell you that it's not only a tiny country, smaller than the state of Rhode Island, it's also an incredibly flat country. Our tallest hill is 171 meters high. That's 561 feet for you Americans, and that's just one hill. Most of the country is 30 meters or 100 feet above sea level. So, as you can imagine, we don't have any mountains, which is why whenever I go to the US, I try to spend some time in the mountains. There's just something about that kind of landscape that speaks to me. The majestic peaks, the sheer cliffs, and especially, for some reason, the waterfalls. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved waterfalls. I used to have a big poster on my childhood wall of Niagara Falls, and sometimes at night, I would lie in my bed and imagine I could hear the roar of the water, feel the spray on my face, and smell the good, clean scent of the river. Jenny, of course, quickly found out about this special interest of mine, so whenever we visited, she did some research to find one or more cool waterfalls for us to visit. She would drive us on expeditions to several places in Washington state, and most of the times we would manage to find at least one and usually several different falls to look at, We've seen Spokane Falls, which run right through the center of town and is an amazing sight. After standing for a long time on the shore in the park that's built next to the falls, we took a gondola ride out over the water, which was one of my best experiences ever. As we hung there, suspended over the churning waters with the roaring sound so loud you could barely be heard over it, I was like a little kid again, snapping pictures and grinning, while Jenny held on to the handlebar for dear life. I don't think she liked being suspended like that, but she did it anyway, for me. We've also seen Snoqualmie Falls, the one from the Twin Peaks TV show. That one was even more amazing, despite being smaller, because it's so steep. It's like a wall of water, and it goes into this pine tree hollow, so it looks even bigger than it is. We took a long walk down the slope to the bottom of the fall and stood together on a little platform with the water coming down. We couldn't get very close to the falls, though. According to the signs, it was too dangerous, and I think we were both a bit disappointed about that. Apparently, in the past, they had let people walk along the river all the way up to the fall itself, but that wasn't allowed anymore. Jenny promised me that next time, she would try and find a waterfall we could get close to. Which leads me to my most recent trip to Washington State. As usual, I flew in and Jenny picked me up from the airport, and already on the way to her house, she told me in an excited voice about the trip she'd planned this time. "It's a national park, but it's sort of off the beaten path," she said. "It's not very crowded, and it has an amazing waterfall. We can get there in just a few hours, and if we don't feel like driving back the same day, there's a town nearby with a motel and a decent Mexican restaurant. I went to see it a couple of months ago, and get this, you can get all the way down to the water in this place. And I mean all the way." "Isn't there a safety zone or something?" I asked. "No, that's the best part. The actual best place to stand and watch is across from the top of the waterfall. But if you follow a path, you can get all the way down to the river and get really close. I didn't go down when I was there, but you could see the path all the way, and there were no gates or barriers." I was excited. It had been one of my big dreams to actually get close enough to the falls to feel the spray, so Jenny's description made it hard to wait until the next morning when we drove off. Jenny had packed some sandwiches and sodas, and we sang along to the radio as we drove. I remember that TLC song was on, and we both laughed because we really were out chasing waterfalls. We drove away from Seattle and out into the open country. Washington is a very pretty state, and I'm always a little lost in the sight of the big forests. But this time we were going south, and eventually the country became a bit drier and more desert-like, such as I've seen it in the southern states. I hadn't expected that, so I took it all in as a new experience. The trees went away, replaced by large brown rocks and cliffs that looked like long, thin spires. It was almost like being in a completely different state. Finally, after a few hours of driving, Jenny turned down a side road with a big sign that said Palouse Falls National Park. The side road went through several hills, and even though there were a couple of buildings along the road, a ranger station, a few buildings that might have stored equipment of some kind, and even a couple of personal houses, we met no other cars. Finally, the road ended in a round dirt parking lot. There were 3 cars parked in it, but it had room for about 40, and Jenny parked close to the little path that went to the lookout point. We got out and stretched our legs and backs. We had been in the car for about 4 hours, with only a short pit stop at a gas station, so it felt good to move around a bit. On the other side of a gentle slope, I could hear the majestic sound that I loved so much, the roar of falling water. Jenny got the food out of the back, and together we walked up the path. It took my breath away when we crested the little hill and looked down into the almost circular lake at the bottom. A huge, slender waterfall came pouring out of a river at about the same level with us, and it rushed into a canyon over 350 feet deep. The fall itself was probably 200 feet, but because it was so focused and slender, it looked even taller. It was completely white, the foam shimmering like a silver curtain in the sun. The Columbia River beneath us snaked away into the canyon and regained its normal green color when it moved away from the lake around the waterfall. The sound was loud but not deafening up here. We could easily talk to each other, and I gave Ginny a hug and told her what an amazing place she had found. I also took a bunch of pictures of the fall itself and of Ginny with the fall in the background. I looked at those pictures later, but I can't look at them anymore. I should have seen it, but I was too busy with the phone to really look at the water. Ginny suggested that we have lunch in the little picnic area next to us, and I thought that sounded good. Despite the other cars, we had the place completely to ourselves. There was no trace of the people who had come here in them, or at least we thought so, until we sat down at one of the wooden tables and began eating our sandwiches. We discovered that the picnic area had a lot of trash in it. On many tables, plates had been left out. Any food was gone, probably snatched by a bird or one of the gray marmots that we saw scurrying around on the ground several places. But there were still cups, plates, and other things lying on the tables and scattered on the ground. "That's strange," Ginny noted. "Maybe the park ranger hasn't been out here in a while. We should really clean it up." We sat and enjoyed our food while watching the waterfall. I could smell the river and couldn't wait to do what Ginny had said you could do and go all the way down to the base of the fall. Then, after throwing our own trash away, we went around the picnic area and picked up the stuff other people had left behind. This was where I got my first sense that something wasn't just off, but actually wrong. By several of the tables, there were bags left behind. Of course, there were the standard picnic plastic boxes and bags, but also purses and shoulder bags, even a backpack. One bag was a pretty expensive-looking model with a shoulder strap, and when I opened it, there was a wallet, phone, and keys in it. "What the hell?" I said, looking through it. The bag belonged to Amelia Morgan, and her face on her driver's license showed a woman in her 50s with dark, curly hair. "Why would they leave this behind?" Ginny came over and looked over my shoulder. She took out the phone and touched it. The screen lit up, showing a quarter power and several text messages, of which we could only see the first one. It said, "Amelia, call me!" in all caps, and with an exclamation point at the end. "Do you think something happened to her?" Ginny asked. "She must be one of the people in the other cars." "I don't know," I said, and listened. Aside from the waterfall itself, I could hear only the wind and the scurrying little rodents. No other people. No screams, no playful shouts. Where could Amelia have gone off to? "This is kind of spooky," Ginny said, and went over to the edge of the viewing area. She leaned forward to look down along the river's edge. "There's nobody down there either. They can't have just walked back. We would have seen them in the road, and it's a long walk to the next town." "It is," I said, and put the phone and wallet back in the purse. "Look, let's pick up the other bags and things and hand them in at the ranger station we passed on the way out. Maybe they'll know what to do." Ginny looked uncomfortable. "Look, I know we've driven for 4 hours, and I know you looked forward to this, but I'm getting a really strange vibe. Maybe we should just head back right now." I should have done what she said. She was my friend. She was getting nervous, and we were all alone in the middle of an apparently empty national park. But I'd looked forward to this, and I was so close to experiencing something I dreamed about for so long. "I want to go down to the falls first," I said. "You can stay up here if you want, but I'm just going to go down and feel the spray, feel what it's like to be that close." Jenny looked around the empty picnic area and the parking lot beyond. "All alone up here? No thanks. I'll come with you, but let's make it quick, okay? Let's just go down, snap a photo, touch the spray, and then go talk to the ranger." And so we did. We left all the bags and purses on one of the picnic tables and went to the edge of the drop, from where a steep path led down the side of the canyon. There was a sign right at the start of the path that said, "Stay back from the edge. The national park takes no responsibility for damages incurred by falling." But as Jenny had said, there was no gate or other restriction that prevented you from going down. This was, clearly, a matter of policing yourself. We began to walk down the path while staying close to the cliff so we wouldn't slip and fall. It was surprisingly easy to get down, and I noticed something odd. There were plenty of footprints in the dirt on the path. I'm no Eagle Scout, but I've seen enough footprints in my time to tell the difference between a man's shoe, a woman's boot, and a child's sneaker. Whoever had been having picnics had clearly gone down the hill. A few minutes later, we came to the river's edge. I can't even put into words how I felt as I stood there, just a few feet from a huge, white, churning waterfall. Down here, the noise was very loud, and I could indeed feel the spray on my face and arms. I breathed deeply, held my face up and my arms out, just sucked it all in. This was what I had dreamed of. Jenny took a photo of me with her phone, then moved to get a better angle and stood close to the edge of the water to take another. I pulled my baseball cap off, felt the tickling feeling of the water falling on my face, and I screamed a jubilant, exalted scream of happiness. Then, Jenny screamed. I had my eyes closed, and at first, I thought she was screaming just for fun because I'd made my happy cry. I opened my eyes and saw that wasn't the case. Out of the waterfall came something. I can't even really describe it properly. Do you remember I said that the waterfall was all white and shimmering with foam? Imagine that foam coalescing into a kind of tentacle, longer than a fire hose, and then imagine another one and another one. It was like there was a giant white octopus inside the waterfall itself, and it was sticking its arms out through the wall of water. All I could think about was the ancient history class I took in high school, where we learned about the Odyssey and about how Odysseus sailed between Scylla and Charybdis, and where Scylla was some kind of tentacle monster that snatched his sailors right off the deck of his ship. I even remembered the verse itself. They writhed, gasping, as Scylla swung them up her cliff, and there at her cavern's mouth she bolted them down raw, screaming out, flinging their arms toward me, lost in that mortal struggle. Whatever was behind or inside the waterfall looked like it was big as a house, and the tentacles were reaching for us, coming over the water like the spray itself. They looked light, made of foam, but before either of us had time to move, one of them wrapped itself around Jenny's leg and yanked her forward. Jenny screamed again, and as soon as she touched the water's edge, More tentacles seemed to form from the drops of water in the air. They wrapped around her and pulled her into the lake. Another tentacle went for me. It slid toward me and would have grabbed my arm, but instead grabbed onto the baseball cap I held in my hand. It yanked, and the cap was pulled from my fingers. I staggered backwards, trying to get away from it, but it was like it wasn't interested in me. Then I realized it couldn't actually see me. The way the arms moved was fumbling, sweeping like a blind person's cane. It had grabbed something and thought that was me. I screamed Jenny's name, but she was somewhere under the water. That was a mistake, because now the thing knew someone else was still there that it hadn't caught. The tentacles spread out, searching for me, and I ran like I've never run before. I sprinted up the steep path, and now I saw something about the footprints I hadn't noticed before. There were plenty of prints going down, but none that went back up. Behind me, one of the tentacles slammed into the dust on the path, right behind my shoe. I couldn't even scream anymore. I didn't have air for it. I just stumbled forward as fast as I could and didn't look back until I made it to the top. Then I turned around. There was no sign of the tentacles or of Jenny. The waterfall looked like it had the whole time. The river's surface was empty. I screamed her name again, but she was gone. While keeping a close eye on the water, I sat down on one of the benches to catch my breath. I still had my phone, but when I tried it, I found there was no coverage out here. I was using my Danish cell phone, and whenever I went to the US, the roaming always failed me. I began to cry. I had never felt as alone in my life as I did at that moment. I decided to try and head back to the ranger station, but realized that Jenny still had the car keys in the pocket of her jeans. Suddenly, I remembered Amelia and the purse she had left behind. I scrambled over to the table where we had piled all the bags together, and sure enough, there was a set of car keys to a Ford. I found it in the parking lot, ran over to it, and pushed the button. It unlocked and started on the first try. I don't think I'm lying when I say that I've never been happier for a car to start than at that moment. I drove back to the ranger station as quick as I could. For a moment, I was worried that it too would be empty and abandoned, that the monster in the waterfall would have eaten the ranger up as well. But that wasn't the case. An older man with salt and pepper beard stood out front and was busy painting a sign that read, "Don't feed the marmots." When I came to a skidding stop and tumbled out of the car, he looked up at me and frowned. "What's the hurry, mister?" I opened my mouth and then I didn't know how to begin. I just collapsed in front of the ranger, who barely had time to grab me before I face-planted. He carried me inside his little house and gave me some strong coffee. When I'd swallowed a few mouthfuls, I began to tell him the story. I told him of the trash, the forgotten bags, the footprints on the path down to the water. When I got to the part of the tentacles forming out of the foam itself, he shook his head. "You're a lunatic, mister," he said, matter-of-factly. "Ain't nothing like that happening at Palouse. This is a quiet waterfall without monsters, I can promise you that. You must have imagined the whole damn thing." I asked him how I could have imagined Amelia's car keys, since I had driven her car down there instead of the one I came in. He didn't really have an answer to that, but he promised to go back up to the waterfall and take a good look around. He asked me if I wanted to come, but I said he couldn't get me within 5 miles of that waterfall. He went back alone, and when he returned, he said he found the cars all right, and the bags piled up, but no sign of Ginny or any of the other people. He told me Ginny probably just fell in and drowned. That was when I noticed his boots. They were all covered with dirt, like he had kicked a lot of it around on the path, erasing footprints. Ginny's parents didn't believe me either. They think Ginny probably drowned herself. Apparently, she had a recurring depression, which she had never told me a word about, that made her a danger to herself, as her father put it. They were very nice people, and they helped me get back into Ginny's house to get my suitcase so I could fly home. I had lost all desire to be in Washington. Since that day, I've only looked at my photos of that day once. The day I got back, I transferred them to my computer and scrolled through them. On a screen bigger than my phone, things are easier to spot. In the pictures I took from the picnic area, with Ginny in the foreground, I can see something white in the waterfall. Something long and shapeless and moving between shots. If I had only seen that, I could have been warned not to go near it. I can also see a tiny red dot on the river's edge. When I zoomed in, I could tell what it was. A red child's sneaker. Since that day, I've thought a lot about the other waterfalls, where you can't get close to the water and be hit by the spray, where large barriers supposedly protect you from falling in, but maybe that's not the whole reason. And I think of the huge waterfalls, Niagara, Angel Falls, Victoria Falls, and I wonder if whatever lives in the spray matches the size of the fall. Because Victoria Falls is over 300 feet high and 5,000 feet wide. The crime and the cover-up. Sounds like someone is in league with the monsters, doesn't it? Or a lot of someone's. How many people do you suppose an enormous waterfall monster would want to eat in a day? Chillingly, you don't think they can move downstream, do you? Or slip underground into an old limestone cavern? Ugh, imagine running into this thing in the dark underground. But I digress. This story was written by a friend of the channel and myself, Claus Holm. If you'd like to hear more from Claus and I'll provide a link in the show notes to our first project together, Tempest Investigations, which you can listen to for free. Expect to hear more from us soon, as we bring a collection of his short stories to audio. Whatever you do, just stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. And don't fall asleep.